Hi everyone and welcome to my very first art critique. Some days ago I was checking my Facebook page again and stumbled across Nicole, who was having a great painting, but she had some issues, so she wanted to change some things and wasn't sure what to change, and so we wrote a bit and I asked her if she wanted me to critique her painting. And she agreed, so thank you for trusting me in this, and this is what I want to show you today. Here is the original painting that she did. And of course her contact information for Facebook and Instagram, so make sure to check her account out and give her some love. Before we start in general, I have to say I really liked her painting as it already was. It is calm, it is a nice composition from my point of view, and I really liked her colors. Especially I was wondering how you did the stone effect for the foreground and the stones themselves, so if you could take the time and let me know in the comments how you did it, would be very much appreciated, because it really looks nice and textured. What I actually did, and you will see in the following video, I have more or less just changed the values for some parts of the painting, so increased some values, and I did this by glazing over it. In the first place I thought I will do this with Photoshop and just show the changes afterwards, but then I thought that Photoshop is not the easiest to transfer in the painting method, so I decided to paint the changes onto the painting, and therefore I printed it on photo paper, which turned out to be not the very best idea, as the photo paper did not really grab the paint that I put onto it. After some time I just figured out that I don't have to make it 100% perfect, just to show what I've changed and where I have added the shadows and so on. Overall spoken, it did not need so much change, just some values here and there. And to achieve this, and you can also do this on your original painting, I glazed over some areas. And if you don't know, a glaze is just the color and thinned it down quite a bit. So if you go for acrylic paint, just use more water than you would regularly do. And if you go for oil paints, use paint thinner, or even better, use liquid or something similar to thin the paint down, to just have less pigment on your brush, but have the same volume on the brush. So you can glaze over it and it is not that opaque as it would be having not thinned the paint down. And the effect, what it does, you can still see the texture that you've already painted underneath, and it will tint your color in the color that you glaze over it. So you basically do not have to repaint the complete area that you want to tint. You just go over it with your glazing color and therefore change the tonal value of the paint. So what I had to do is to increase the contrast in the ocean, and therefore I added some darker blues closer to the horizontal line, as this area would be darker in real life as well. So, and instantly you get a more three-dimensional look. I also increased the brightness on some of the stones. I increased the shadows behind the stones and also increased the brightness a bit on the big stone where the small stones are standing on, if this makes sense. I also changed some of these trees in the background, not because I did not like the trees, I really did like them in the composition, but I wanted them not to stand as alone as they are standing right now. So I grouped them up a bit and put some more yellows and greens in it, just to make more texture and structure and make it a bit more interesting. And I also increased the darkness of the water close to the stones where the trees are standing, just to give it a more three-dimensional look again. I also really like the waves breaking in the foreground. I just added some more darker blues as well within the wave, and this turned out quite nicely and was very easily done. If you decide to glaze over your original painting, feel free to do it. If you would like to start over trying it again and then just compare the new painting to the old painting, which is sometimes a nice idea to do, because you can then see your improvement or areas where you have changed compared to the other drawing or the painting that you did. So nowadays we tend to compare to other artists which we are following on Instagram or YouTube or whatsoever, and sometimes lose the objectivity to oneself, I think. So just to see how much better they are or where they are on their own journey, and compared to your own style or technique or knowledge, they might be a bit further away on their road, which can be a bit frustrating. So seeing now and then how much yourself improved is a great way to see that you're also making progress and getting better and more self-confident. So going back to the painting itself, you've noticed that you cannot see the sun in the painting itself, which is not a problem at all. Having a look at the stones in the front of the painting, you might think that the sun is Yeah, it might be noon, so sun is very high in the sky, so that there is a small shadow. I always felt that the stones look like they were floating, so not really sitting on the ground. So I decided to push the sun a little bit more to the horizontal line. Still, you cannot see it, of course, but the shadow itself will be a bit wider, so I extended the shadow to go out of the painting, which in my opinion pushed the stones a bit more into the painting. And overall spoken, well, everything that I added to the picture looks not as smooth as I would have wanted it to be, but the photo paper really did not take the paint as I expected to. So the first layer mostly dried invisible, which was strange. So the first layer of white was gone when it was dry, as well as the black, as if the paper would have sucked the paint up. So I decided to use bigger blobs of paint just to make it visible, especially on the video. But if you have bigger blobs of paint on the surface that does not really take the paint, it more or less glides around, so it looks not as smooth. But as it was just for the overall look of the piece, I think it's okay. So if you do this in real life on a real canvas, you will have an easier time than me having it here. And it really did not take that long. So the overall process, as this video is sped up, as you can see, took me about 25 minutes just to complete all the changes that I did in the foreground and mixing some color and stuff. Yeah, this process will not really take so much longer on the original painting. If it is a bigger one, you just can take a larger brush. And on canvas it is way easier to blend the colors together. Although it is dry, just take a bit more water when you want to blend and you will get a smooth transition line. So this is quite easy to do and similar as I've tried to show it here. In the end, I wanted to show Nicole how to create clouds, as this was something she was struggling with and was not sure if she wanted to add clouds or not, which are actually not really necessary, but they add some more depth into the painting, in my opinion. And adding clouds in acrylics is same as in oils, not that hard. I have to say I'm no landscape artist, so I did some landscapes when I was younger and still have some of the knowledge, but I really did not train it that much once I started with the portraits. So if anyone has any other better ideas, just feel free to let me know or let Nicole know. So I just used some paint directly from the tube. I added no water and I used a brush. This is one of my GP brushes that I don't really actually use for painting, just for some effects like clouds, for example. So I added the paint to my great photo paper and just scratched the paint around in circles to give it a cloudy effect. You can also use a paper towel just to push the paint around and therefore create a thin layer of paint, which looks like a thinner cloud, of course. To make it look realistic, you have to work in layers as well, so to increase the values, so the brightness and the darkness of the cloud in layers. If you don't like what you did, you can, as long as it's wet, wipe it off with a red paper towel and start over it. Or if it's already dried, you can paint over it with the next layer. What you have to keep in mind when painting clouds is where the shadow goes. This is actually quite simple to say. So as long as the sun is above the cloud layer, so if you have the horizontal line, there is another line which represents the cloud layer. If the sun is above, the clouds are shiny and bright on top of the cloud. And if the sun goes below this line, so it's between the horizontal line and the cloud layer, the bottom side of the cloud will be brighter than the top of the cloud. As it was not as easy to show on the photo paper, I decided to make some small canvases to show you how you can create clouds in different methods. And therefore I just used some loose canvas, glued it to a cardboard and painted the backgrounds on it. In the first one I wanted to show how you can add clouds on a dried surface. So actually as it was on the photo paper, but as the canvas has more texture, it will be a bit easier. The second one is what you can achieve if you use the wet and wet technique, so if the background is still wet. And the third one is basically close to the first one, but by adding oil paints. So what you can do, especially if you paint over acrylics, you can also use oil paints. It works really well. And the advantage of the oil paints is that you have a slower drying time. So if you're uncertain if the look that you have achieved is something that you want, you can take more time actually. So if you think you've messed up, just use some paint thinner and wipe it off. You can completely wipe it from the dried surface of the acrylics and start over if you did not like what you did. What you have to consider, you can only use the oils on a dried acrylic surface, so don't use oil paints when the acrylic paint is still wet. This will mess up the whole thing. And also don't use acrylic paint if you have used oil paints for the main painting. Don't use acrylics over it. I think for the moment it will stick to the painting, but as you should never use any water-based color onto an oil-based color due to archival reasons, so don't use the acrylics over an oil paint. So basically this finishes everything that I did for this painting and art critique. I hoped I had some tips that will help you in the future. If anyone else has any more tips, please leave in the comments. I'm always happy to learn something new as well. If you would like to have your painting or drawing critiqued as well, please let me know on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or wherever you find me. And I will be happy to help. It does not have to be a video. It can also be a chat, whatever. And if you liked what I did, just give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel, or both. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye bye.